Good morning, 7th grade music. This is a video to better explain how you should be doing your 2 listening journals. You have 2 assigned listening journals during distance learning. If you haven't done them yet, this is going to be a great tutorial about what I'm expecting from you. And if you've already done them, you can go back through and double check anything that you weren't sure of. So of your 2 listening journals, you are picking songs that you enjoy. One song should be like your favorite song. It's okay if it has some words in there that you wouldn't normally use in school. I'm okay with that. Just be within reason. I do listen to these songs. And the other song is one that you want me to add to a playlist. Again, it can be just another favorite or any song that you enjoy. So I'm using an example with a jazz piece because it is April and April is Jazz Appreciation Month, and we would normally be doing a whole unit on jazz and 12-bar blues and all sorts of things in class. So I picked a jazz piece, and you might be able to hear that a little bit in the background. I've got it playing so that I can reference it. But I did a listening journal for this song, and so I'm just going to talk through it a little bit now. So if you don't know some of the answers to your song choice, then you'll have to look them up. But for the most part, it's pretty open-ended. So you're going to tell me what the genre is. Genre means style. So in this case, as I already said, it's jazz. So that's what I put for that first question. The genre is jazz. I think there are blank number of musicians playing this piece. Now, that's something you might already know off the bat. It might be something you have to look up if there's a song that's performed by a band or a singer with a band. In this case, I know that it's a quartet, meaning there's 4 musicians. I think this piece is mostly major or minor. Remember, major, if we want to put a mood to it, is usually uplifting. Maybe sometimes we say happy, exciting. Minor, we often will describe as melancholy, sad, gloomy. In this case, this piece I don't consider to be sad or gloomy, but it is mostly in a minor key. And then a title I would give the piece. Now you already know what the title of your song or piece is, so this is where you have to make one up. I called it Shuffle and Sway. That's kind of what it makes me want to do when I'm listening to it. It makes me kind of want to dance a little bit. You're making up a title for the song, so you're giving it a new title. For the next one, this one's a little tricky, but it says here's some rhythmic patterns that are repeated. You might not be able to determine that specifically, but if you can figure out maybe like a steady beat or a couple patterns, you can do that. If you look at mine, I kind of simplified what I hear in this piece. Now these aren't the rhythms that are actually in it, but I've just simplified it a little bit. So ta-dee, 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 ta, 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 ta. I've just simplified what I'm hearing. It's mostly the beat. All right. How does the piece make you feel? Just give me, it makes me happy, it makes me energized, it makes me relaxed, something like that. I said relaxed and content. Some instruments that you hear, in this case there's no voices for mine, so I can't list any voices or types of voices, but I listed that I hear a saxophone, a drum set, a piano, and a string bass. If this were in a movie, here's what I think would be happening on the screen. So this is where, again, you get a little bit of freedom and you are talking about like what image comes to mind. Maybe this piece of music has been used in a movie or TV show that you've seen, or the song that you choose has been used in a TV show or a movie. So you could list that and you could say, I know that I've heard it here, and you could describe that. If it hasn't, then you get to use your imagination. So I said someone's walking through a park on a rainy fall night, maybe not super rainy, but like misty, but they're enjoying the quiet and solitude. Then the last one on this side of the page is called texture, and that is thick versus thin. So a thick textured music means there's a lot of musical lines doing different things or really thick harmonies. Thin means maybe there's not as many musical lines going on, or there might be many musical lines, but they're all doing the same thing. So an example of a thick texture in music could be an orchestra. You've got all the strings doing one big idea. You've got the woodwinds doing a whole different thing. You've got trombones doing a completely different line. You've got tubas doing a completely different line. You've got percussion doing a different line. So that would mean that they're all doing something different from each other. There's many musical ideas happening and they're not all the same. Thin would be that entire orchestra's playing and there's a lot of instruments, but you could still consider it thin if they're all playing the same idea or the same musical line. If you have 100 people singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star in unison, yes, there's 100 people, but they're all doing the same thing. So you could say that that's thin. I also like to think of texture in music when I'm thinking about clothing. So right now I'm wearing a sweatshirt that's kind of thick. It keeps me warm. There's a lot of fibers that go into it. It's a pretty thick sweatshirt. So that's what's keeping me warm. There's a lot of parts to it. But if I were wearing just a thin t-shirt, very thin, maybe like a workout shirt, that doesn't have a lot of material to it, it's very light, that would be considered thin. So you can kind of think about music that way. In this case, I considered this piece of music thin. There's an ostinato, meaning a pattern that repeats itself in the piano the whole time. The drum set is doing a very light beat underneath, and the string bass is also playing the same ostinato over and over. The saxophone has the melody. So even though there's 4 different parts, they're very repetitive and they're not very heavily layered onto each other. So I considered it a thin texture. There is a backside. Is there a lot of musical contrast or dynamic contrast, volume contrast? That just means, is it always quiet? Is it always loud? Or does it change? I said yes, there's a lot of volume contrast. Even in the middle, when it's just the drum set, the string bass, and the piano, there's some volume contrast there. It's not always loud, it's not always quiet. Do you like this piece of music and why? You are choosing the song, so I assume that everyone is going to say yes, they like this piece of music. And you have to tell me why. Remember, even in class, if we were doing something like this and you don't like the piece of music that's being played, you can't just say no because I think it's dumb. You have to tell me why it's dumb. So in this case, tell me, yes, I like this, and this is why. Give me an example. I said yes because I enjoy jazz music and I enjoy the light nature of these timbres together. Now remember, timbres means the different sounds you're actually hearing. I think this piece of music could be better if. You might not have an answer. You might say, I like it the way it is. To me, I would love to hear this on a different wind instrument, so maybe something other than a saxophone. But that one you might be able to say, I like it as is. I mean, you are choosing a song you already like. And then any other information you'd like to share. So this is where you can tell me, like, this is the first time I heard this song, or this is another reason why it's my favorite. Maybe there's an interesting fact you know about it. So I shared that in the middle of this piece, this jazz piece that was just playing in the background for a few minutes, the middle of the songs, very repetitive. You hear the piano and the string bass doing the same thing over and over. There's no saxophone playing, but for the middle 2.5 minutes of the song, there's actually a drum set solo over that ostinato, which is kind of interesting. It just sounds very repetitive, but if you listen closely, it's actually a drum set solo. You're going to tell me the title and the composer or performer. So the piece that I used for this example is called Take 5, performed originally by the Dave Brubeck Quartet. So again, 4 people. So hopefully that clears this up. You have 2 listening journals, and again, you're choosing the song. I don't mind what song you choose, like I said. If it's a song that you say, we wouldn't necessarily listen to this in class or in school, that's okay. Keep it within reason. I love to learn new music. I want to know what you're listening to, and enjoy doing this assignment. Like, there's a couple parts that you might skip over, but in general, it's kind of a fun, relaxing way to keep musically engaged, so I can't wait to see what you have. Make sure you send me those things. You can send me pictures of your finished products via email, or you can send me something through the Google Classroom, but I'd love to see your finished listening journals. Have fun.